is good, everybody? Welcome to Cross Country Bank Angler. It is mid-February in my area. We're still in the midst of winter, but despite the fact that it is still winter here, I was able to get out and catch my first fish of 2025. We had a milder day in the forecast. It was not so cold, and I decided to get out for an afternoon and see if I could find a fish, and it ended up working out. So I'm going to go ahead and roll that footage now.
It's a fish, guys. That's a fish. That is a fish. Slow rolling the spinnerbait, guys. Yes. Yes. Yes, guys. That didn't take long after we made that switch, did it? Dude, yes. Felt this fish thump it, guys. Good, guys. That feels so good. That's our first fish of the year. Let's take a look at him. That's about a pound. He's in pretty good condition as well. Just felt him smack it, guys. In this cold water. This water's probably, it was in the 30s yesterday, guys, raining. This water probably is in like the low 40s. And you can get a bass to hit that slow rolled spinnerbait. Yes. Beautiful fish. Guys, I haven't caught a fish for over a month. That's a long time for me. So I am really happy to get one. Now, he didn't really fight much. He fought like a wet sock for the most part. They don't fight very hard when it's cold, to be honest, guys. But that's a solid fish, That's not a dink or anything. I'm happy to start off the year with a decent one on that, that very specialized technique that I really enjoy, and it's really a good technique for bank fishing. So let me get this guy back in the water. There he goes, just dove right down to the bottom.
But mid-February means that it won't be long before spring is around the corner. So I'm starting to think about, making some plans for the spring, as things start to warm up, as the fish start to move, what kind of baits and lures that I'm gonna try to use when I just wanna get out there and catch some fish. So this video is gonna be about my top 5 lure techniques or categories of lure that I like to use to search for fish in a multi-species approach in early spring. Let's get into it. So there's a lot of videos out there about, trying to kind of pinpoint, what type of lure you should use, during a certain time of year, whether it's, during the month or what have you, what season. But a lot of that stuff, is geared towards bass fishing, and I wanted to do something that I think is a little more beginner friendly for someone who's bank fishing, maybe just getting into fishing, a beginner. Maybe you just bought your first, spinning rod combo from, Walmart or whatever, something fairly basic. And you just want to get out there and catch some fish. You don't care what species they are or necessarily if they're particularly big or not. Just a high percentage lures that you can cover a lot of water with and have a good chance of running into not just bass, but potentially other predators, pickerel and whatever, maybe if there's pike around you, something like that, and just, the wider variety of panfish species that are available in your area, whether that's, perch or crappie or sunfish or something else like that. So to get started here, my first category of lure that I wanted to make sure to include in this video is going to be a jerkbait. So here's one that I had. This is a Rapala floating, and I'm specifically, but not just any old jerkbait. When people say jerkbaits these days, you're usually thinking of a thin, minnow-bodied shaped lure that is going to suspend when you pause it in the water. But my focus today is actually going to be on a floating jerkbait, which doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, but a lot of people actually do use these. They're actually extremely popular, especially if you're a bank angler. A floating lure that can come back up to the surface. When you're on the bank, sometimes it makes a little bit more sense in terms of avoiding snags and stuff like that to opt for a floating jerkbait instead of a suspending. And as the water warms up later in the spring, you can also use these as surface lures, topwater lures. The one I just showed you here, this is the Rapala Original Floating Minnow, guys. This is an extremely popular and well-known lure, and I'm actually going to try to do a video specifically on that lure at some point. But this is the silver, and this is the size F5, guys. It's pretty small. I think it weighs like, I don't know, like 1/10 of an ounce. But it's got enough weight where you could cast it on like a medium or a medium light spinning setup, with lighter line. Not necessarily far, but a fishable distance for smaller bodies of water. And of course, if you want, this small one, this F5 size is really the size that I opt to for like multi-species fishing, guys, because an aggressive crappie or a bluegill would also hit one of these things. So you just open yourself up for a higher number of bites when you opt for this smaller size. This is what's going to catch you a wider range of species, that smaller F5. But if you do want to size up, maybe target bass or something like that, you can go up to a different size here. This is the F9. And this is, you're gonna be able to cast this one further. So if you wanna like make some longer casts, cover more water, you could upsize to this one. And if you just wanna try to catch a bigger fish, a larger, like a bass or something like that versus the panfish. And I really like this style of lure when I've got clear, shallow water, guys. That environment is pretty important for fishing these effectively, in my opinion. Now they can work in slightly more stained water. Sometimes you may want to adjust your color. I tend to stick with these silver ones, but there are some brighter colors out there that might work with more of a stain in the water. But that's where these seem to excel. They swim down about 1 foot or 2 under the surface when you're winding it, and that's really how I retrieve these, guys. I tend to just kind of make my cast and retrieve fairly slow and steady, and then every now and then just give it a twitch and pause for a second and then keep going. And when you're just winding them, they have a really subtle skinny wobble to them. They roll a little bit from side to side, very natural looking, very appealing to a bass. This kind of thinner minnow shape. It's an easy to swallow shape for a bass, and it's just very natural and clear water. And when you make that twitch, it is still a jerk bait, so it still will cut and dart when you're twitching it. And you can obviously vary the amount of winding versus twitching that you do. If you really want to get a reaction strike, you can twitch it a lot more, and sometimes that'll get a fish that was just kind of following it when you were winding it to commit, but you start twitching it and working it a lot more with your rod tip. And another variation on this, guys, is this jointed version. This is the Rebel jointed, just a different action, more of a steady retrieve lure, but you can pretty much fish these the same way as the Rapalas with one piece. It's just gonna have a little bit more tail action. So those are gonna be great, those bigger ones for bass, and then that smaller F5 size Rapala for more of a multi-species approach, in smaller ponds or creeks. Like I said, shallow, clear water is going to be best for this approach. So number 2 on my list here, guys, is really one of those kind of classic staple lures that a lot of beginners have probably fished with. If you haven't, you definitely should, but that's just a simple grub, guys, a little 2-inch grub. And more specifically, I'm talking about a curly tail grub. Here's one right here. This is like a black and blue body with a chartreuse tail. And I have this on a 1/8 ounce jig head. And this is going to be a very effective option for crappie especially, but also bass and ponds and creeks, and panfish as well. If you're out kind of along the coast where I am, near the sort of the tidal systems, there's a lot of fish activity in those habitats right now. That's going to bring perch and shad and striped bass later on up the rivers to spawn. And yeah, these little grubs, this is a perfect little lure to catch migrating perch, whether they're yellow perch or white perch. They love little plastics like that. And yeah, if you're doing any spring crappie fishing, this is just such a little staple, guys, to cast for some crappie. And this is another lure I kind of prefer, usually fairly clear water, but it really depends on the color that I'm using. This brighter, bolder color, you can get away with this in pretty stained water, whereas this more natural kind of a bait fish color, I would opt for more in clear water. And it just sort of depends on what type of forage you're imitating. For spinning tackle, like if you're using a medium rod, I think a 1/8 ounce jig is perfect for these. And in terms of the retrieves that I like, you can just cast and reel this thing back and you'll catch some fish doing that. But I think you're going to improve your chances of making some catches with this if you throw some variations in your retrieve. Change your speed up and pause it, or use a jigging retrieve, shaking the rod a lot as you're winding it in. So it's important to kind of try different approaches with these curly tail grubs in order to learn really what the fish are going to react to. But this is one of those classic lures, guys. When I was a kid growing up, a lot of the bass, I would say, 80 to 90% of the bass that I caught were on like a little Mr. Twister grub, pretty similar to this. So a lot of people overlook it, think it's like a kid's lure or a beginner lure only, but it's definitely just what I would call a high percentage lure, which means compared to a lot of other techniques, your chance of getting a bite from something, maybe it's not a big fish, but from something, is going to be high with one of these curly tails. So like I said, it's been overlooked by a lot of people. It's kind of on the back burner right now, but it's just a deadly effective presentation, and it's going to catch you some fish. So number 3 on my list for multi-species search baits in the early spring, guys, is a lure that I talk about pretty frequently. It's something that I just catch fish on every year and does really well. That's going to be an inline spinner. So I've got this small one here. This is a rooster tail 1 1/16 ounce. So this is a pretty small one that I would probably throw this on an ultralight, not a medium rod. Wouldn't cast it very far. Here's another one that I built a few years ago. This is more like maybe an 1/8 ounce or a 1/6 of an ounce, all silver. You know, and your colors with these guys, once again, just base it on your conditions. The silver, I would probably opt for clearer water, or if I'm imitating, you know, shad or bait fish, and I maybe could go for this kind of fire tiger patterned one in more stained water, where I want a little bit of a brighter color. And for those, you pretty much just cast them and retrieve them, guys. You do want to use a snap swivel to attach these to your line. It's going to keep you from getting line twist. But yeah, just another time-tested lure. I've caught probably more species on spinners than any other type of lure. So you know, another one I think it gets relegated as a beginner lure, but it can work in just a ton of situations to catch you some fish. And you know, if you're fishing these and you know, maybe you're getting snagged a lot, you know, maybe you're in a pond or something and you've caught some fish on them, but you're also like getting hung up on wood or something at the bottom and losing your spinners. Another a good backup, guys, and you know, for those environments where it's a little snaggier, is going to just be your good old-fashioned beetle spin. The old Johnson. This is a 1/8 ounce black with yellow stripe. This is my favorite color in these. And of course, you can alter your jig size and your plastic to really whatever you just have in the box with you. You know, it's easy to kind of swap those out with these, and you just have a miniature spinnerbait. And yeah, kind of like the rooster tails, you know, the inline spinner. Just all sorts of fish will hit these.
Whoa. Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. You're watching Cross Country Bank Angler. If you're enjoying the video so far, if you've learned something new about fishing, or just find the video entertaining or relaxing in any way, then I want to take the time to ask you to please subscribe to the channel. I know that there's a lot of fishing related content on YouTube right now. There are a lot of channels out there. So if you're taking the time to watch mine, I just want to say that I appreciate you, and I hope you'll stick around. We've got weekly fishing videos here at Cross Country Bank Angler. You know, wade fishing, topwater, bait finesse, ultralight. So if that's the kind of fishing that you enjoy, then I encourage you to hit that subscribe button, because I think you'll enjoy all the future content that I'm going to be putting out on the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you'll consider supporting me by subscribing.
All right, so number 4 on my list is gonna be some kind of crankbait. And you know, this is another category of lure where you can really change what species you're sort of targeting based on the size of lure that you're using. So when I think small, you know, I start off really small, guys. This is a Strike King Bitsy minnow. It's like a fire tiger pattern. I think this is like an 1/8 of an ounce, but it's like an inch long, you know, teeny tiny hooks on it. But you know, this is great for, you know, creeks or smaller ponds, you know, places where you're trying to mimic smaller forage. And you know, this is, yeah, I've caught plenty of bass and like bluegill on this. So for the multi-species approach, guys, just go down to these smaller sizes. But obviously, if you're trying to target, you know, bass or bigger game fish, you know, chain pickerel, you know, you can go up to some bigger baits. You know, this is that Rapala OG Tiny 4 that I talked about in my top lures of 2024 video. Deadly little flat-sided bait, good for colder water, or just really anytime you want to be a little more finesse with your crankbait. Caught tons of bass on that. Here's another one that I like in the spring. This is a Rapala, a shallow shad wrap. I caught some fish on with this model lure in a recent video, but it was a different color. But this is a good one for cold water, guys. It actually kind of reminds me of the floating jerkbait. You know, it's got a pretty, you know, skinny body on it, narrow wobble, you know, skinny wobble, tighter action than a lot of other crankbaits. But yeah, you know, you can fish this one specifically. You know, I'll fish this one slow and fast. You know, most of the time, if I'm fishing like one of these little square bills, I'm gonna be going as fast as I can without blowing it out. You know, having it run over on its side. Same with the flat side. And then another tip I want to mention with these crankbaits, guys, is your colors. And I think it is, you know, this is an age-old tip about spring fishing, you know, throwing red lures, you know, whether it's, you know, is a crankbaits or something else, but I do think a red crankbait can get some bites in the spring. So this is like a color. Here's this is a rebel crawl crankbait. I think this color's called nest robber, but this is one I would use in the spring if I'm going for, you know, typically in a river environment, but not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but anywhere, you know, around some rocks, maybe more stained water. I've also got this custom painted one that I bought not too long ago that I think I may try out in the spring. This is by Sam Potter's Custom Crankbaits in Lexington, North Carolina. So shouts out to Sam Potter's. But I really like the color on this. It's kind of a red with some stripes and then chartreuse on the bottom. That'd be a good dirty water color. And I think this, you can hear the rattling there. I'm pretty sure this is a Lucky Craft blank that he painted. So I'm curious to see how that would work in like some dirtier water when you've got a lot of stuff to kind of deflect off of. All right, guys, so the final type of lure that I want to mention here, and I don't use this one as much as the others, but it is a lure that has specific relevance for both the spring period and my area. So I just mentioned, you know, I live around some tidal systems, and there's a lot of fish activity in those systems. You know, fish coming up and doing their spawn in the spring. You know, perch and shad, herring, striped bass. And in the, you know, the rivers that when I target them, what I like to use is some kind of small spoon, guys. Specifically, you know, these single hook spoons. You can see it's a distinctive shape, and you've got a hook kind of attached here on the end. I think these are called, let's see, what's it say here? Nangusser or something like that. But yeah, if you're fishing the river around me for shad in the spring, you you rig up one of these. You have you tie on some kind of weight. Here's a 1/2 ounce egg sinker. It could be a little smaller than this too, but some kind of weight. And then, you know, you have a leader, maybe a 16-inch leader, 20-inch leader, with one of these tied to the end. And this is how you catch the shad, the hickory shad and the American shad that swim up the river. The colors that seem to work you know, the most consistently is going to be just silver, you know, plain old silver, and gold. I think gold especially is probably the most popular. I don't actually have any more gold ones because I think I lost them last year trying to catch the shad, but other colors will work too. This is a green and white with some silver glitter. This one worked really well for shad a couple years ago. For whatever reason, this was the best color for me. And then I've got another one here. It's kind of green with chartreuse and silver flakes. There's a bunch of different colors that they sell. And if you're shad fishing, I suggest getting, you know, a silver and a gold, then maybe 2 or 3 other colors, and just experimenting with your colors. When I'm saying spoons, it doesn't just have to be, you know, that shad fishing technique, but I did want to mention that because that is a big deal around me, the shad fishing. But yeah, there's other spoons that I like to use just for general purpose fishing in the spring too. Here's another small spoon. You can see it's kind of a unique shape to it. It's a skinny body. And this is called the Thomas Eel. The eel spoon, guys. You can see that skinny body. This one's kind of like a blued gunmetal finish with the orange eyes. I have another one that's like a chartreuse color. And these have done well in like the creeks around me, especially. And they have a kind of a unique action compared to other spoons. You know, they kick really hard from side to side when you're just winding them back, and they really do best at like a slower retrieve. They tend to run at a certain depth as well, which makes them good for streams in fairly shallow water. They tend to run like 2 feet under the surface. You know, you're getting that aggressive side-to-side action and vibration. And yeah, I've had luck, particularly with chain pickerel, using these, but yeah, really other, sunfish and stuff I've caught on these as well. So, a spoon, I think it gets a little overlooked by a lot of anglers. It's kind of an old-fashioned type of lure, but don't overlook those with your creek fishing in the early spring, especially if you have pickerel in your area or in your creeks. All right, guys, so that's gonna be it for this video. I kind of just shot this both to be informative for beginners out there who are looking for some techniques to try out when they're just getting started as the weather warms up, but also because this time of year, if you're a fisherman, especially a bank fisherman, then you are looking forward to spring, right? You're kind of, that anticipation is building. It's fun to shoot a video kind of planning on some of the techniques that I think are going to work this time of year, that I'm going to make sure to try out when I'm back on the water just trying to catch some fish. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Peace.